My previous salary was $150,000 per year, but I only made that for a few months and then I got fired. Couldn't afford my apartment and I lost that and moved back in with family. Growing up, the philosophy from my dad has kind of been with the idea that if I didn't want to live here, I would be more incentivized to move out, and that's kind of where I returned. I'd say the past decade in politics has just been pretty confusing to navigate intergenerationally. I went to college when I was 17 because I skipped a grade, skipped half of kindergarten because it was easy. I was in a learning environment where that kind of transition was possible and I knew how to read. We moved from Illinois to California and back 5 years apart pretty much. So developmentally, I've been in an oscillation that has minded the 4 to 5 year chunks pretty noticeably. I went to college when I was 17 and couldn't get a flu shot without my parents' consent, so I just didn't get a flu shot. When I went to college, I was depressed and asexual. A lot of the social development that I had relied on the church, and I couldn't place some things about the church. I just couldn't make it make sense why so many other people would be born with cohesive understandings of reality that didn't rely on God. Even if I called their concept God, I couldn't figure out why using that language wasn't helpful. Describing this in my family was difficult because in a lot of the calls that I had with my grandparents on my dad's side, they would end the call with, "as long as you believe in God." My family is the basis for how I got started using communicative media. Making my experiences abstract tends to invite imagination about them. Not all the time, though. Sometimes my experiences are just abstract, and that's where the conversation ends. I don't know when that happens, and sometimes being rejected from spaces because I think that I'm abstract is preemptive. Like, I think about it, I plan for that to happen sometimes, and I avoid those spaces. The concept of finding work while this is such a common experience is kind of silly because I understand that my skill set is necessary for the audience that needs to hear it. Saying I was sexually assaulted in college doesn't give people an understanding of how to navigate the world. It turns into a question of intent instead of impact. That's the space that stuck with me for years, and describing it with other people and having it be abstract and having absolutely no attempt to try to contextualize specifically what the implications are for the future has been more damaging. In my specific experience, somebody removed protection while I was drunk, and I didn't know if it was intentional the day after. I had a lot of anxiety about implications for my health and the future if there was going to be life that I didn't intend to bring into the world. I was navigating a space where somebody could intentionally make that kind of decision on my behalf, and I didn't have language or experience to compare what I intended to happen. I didn't know how to say that's not something that I would have wanted, and I didn't know exactly where I went specifically wrong because I had other experiences that didn't give me that kind of anxiety. Now I know that sex with new people is not as good as sex with people who I've gotten to know, and drunk sex is worse. That's just not something that I'm curious about now. The anxiety and lack of communication just made everything worse. Navigating that kind of anxiety for years definitely impacted the way that I navigate intimacy. I don't know what it would have been like if I didn't navigate that kind of anxiety for as long as I did. Support groups related to sexual assault tended to be full of women who had experienced it. And that came with various experiences with how I was welcome in spaces and why. Then navigating relationships with partners, there were just different times where vulnerability was received with different energies and healing looked like different things at different times, so on and so forth. There's a lot that I can say about that. I was fired from a stabilization team for deliberate poor work performance while I was pursuing a diagnosis for something I couldn't place. Pursuing ADHD as a domain of consideration introduced me to a lot of people and strategies that have been helpful. It isn't a helpful scarlet letter and shouldn't be a requirement to explore treatment plans. But I was given a diagnosis. I was given a deadline to get a diagnosis. Otherwise, the company that I worked for wouldn't take my request for more time seriously. Then AI popped onto the scene. Then anybody that would hire me could hire somebody with less experience, and the advantage of hiring someone with less experience is that there are people who would get more experience in the future. If we automate away the opportunities for less experienced people to gain more experience, there aren't going to be more experienced people. I focused on starting a YouTube channel that described how I learn because I majored in learning and education studies with a concentration in applied learning science. So I'm good at describing how learning can happen. You can go back on my YouTube, copy it verbatim, and get hired into tech. There are faster ways to gain more skills, and that would be me teaching you something that's relevant to where your career progression has the most momentum. The free version is just that you practice structuring your thoughts into videos and using technology alongside your developmental interests. This video was me thinking about how to describe that learning happens at different rates, but there are developmental goals that we have for interacting with each other. A lot of the broader messaging isn't for you specifically, it's for you and the people around you, just in case you experience the things that you might if no one knows what's possible. There are degrees of anxiety that come when you focus on everything that's possible. Navigating anxiety can be a challenge. Depression and anxiety are usually symptoms, and we're developing language to discover new patterns and share language about them. Although sharing language about some patterns can make some of them more likely, so it is important to be mindful about the frames. Media can be so complex. Computer science is language about navigating complexity. So on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, cheers.